Welcome, everyone. We've got a pretty good group here, and I know that other folks will be trickling in, but in the interest of being on time, we can go ahead and get started. So first, my name is Abby Schiller. I'll be moderating today's discussion. I am an account director for Clarity in our San Francisco office. Clarity is a global communications agency with offices in, as I mentioned, San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, the UK, and Benelux. So we've got a great global footprint and some really good perspectives here on today's call. If everybody could please remember to go on mute and turn your camera off, that would be fantastic. And for the best experience, please change to active speaker view. Cool. And today's discussion is going to be about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we will open it up to a Q&A session. You are welcome to drop questions in the chat throughout this conversation, and we will answer as many as we can. So just to give you kind of a quick overview of the goal of today's discussion, it's really just to highlight the incredible women of Clarity and give them a platform for sharing their experiences to help kind of inform the industry on how we should be moving forward as we strive for a more equitable future for everyone. Obviously, the elephant in the room is that we've had a pretty substantial economic downturn due to COVID-19. So we've got to kind of address that head on. And to celebrate Women's History Month, we want to explore the nuances of being a female communications professional and give our incredible panelists today the chance to share identity-driven experiences and share their insights for what the future of this industry should look like for the next generation of comms professionals, female or otherwise. And also, this is only the first of many important conversations that we will be having throughout Women's History Month, where we'll have our MDs and other female leaders in technology and investing, discussing important trends in the space and sharing their experiences. So definitely keep in touch and keep an eye out for additional content series that we will be rolling out. And to kick things off, I'd like to give a round of introductions with our panelists. Yeah. So Kara, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Abby. I'm Kara. I am the managing director for Clarity in the New York office, and I have been in PR and communications for, I'm trying to add up the years now, a very long time, I think like 15, 16 years. And I'll turn it over to Monica.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Feig, and I am the managing director of Clarity's Los Angeles office. And I've been in communications for about 13 years.
Great. And then Rachel, would you like to go next?
Yes. Hi, I'm Rachel Gilly. I'm MD of the London office and president of our EMEA function.
Awesome. And then Karin.
And then it's me. So hi, Karin. I'm the managing director Benelux. So joined Clarity about 6 months ago, being an entrepreneur for over 15 years and 25 years of experience in the communications industry.
Awesome. Yeah, so lots of wonderful collective experience here, interesting perspectives that we can share. So just to kind of start our conversation, I'm curious for your insight into kind of the difference between focusing on just equality within an organization and focusing on diversity and inclusion in that organization. And perhaps, Karin, you might want to start us off on this one.
Yeah, of course. I had to really look it up. I think with becoming part of an international family like Clarity, we also noticed that there are differences. For example, how in the Netherlands we look to certain things and how it's been done in the US or the UK or even other countries that we work with very closely. And I think talking about equality, it's more about the status of your rights and opportunities and being handled on an equal level. And when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it's more about regardless of who you are or what you do, that you are equally involved and supported, and that it goes across all the lines of the workplace. So is there a real difference? Probably yes, but I think it all starts with that we see each other as equal persons, that we really start conversations, and that we know that everybody has specific knowledge and experience to add into a workplace. So sometimes I find these kind of discussions maybe even a kind of difficult, because by talking so much about it, don't we emphasize on the fact that there are differences? So I think, yes, there are, of course, but it's all about act like one and feel equal.
Yeah, that's a great point. Especially as you said, you know, we want to focus on merit and skills and not individual characteristics, whether that's gender or anything else. Parental status obviously has emerged as a key theme throughout the pandemic. You know, I'm sure a lot of you saw that recently a report came out showing that of the over 1 million workers who left the workforce in August and September, I think 865,000 were women, which is nearly 80% of that group. What do you think employers can do to support women in the workplace and help address that and prevent that exodus? What should they be doing?
I can jump in here. I think that, you know, the numbers have been absolutely staggering, and it's really sad to see what has happened over the past year for so many people. And I think that, like, something that just needs to be said is that regardless of who the employee is, people just need to have more opportunities given to them. And so I think that, you know, the fact that workplaces have opened up and become more flexible with their hours, but also their location, has been incredibly valuable. And I think that really it just helps organizations a lot better, because they can widen and diversify their work pool, and they can, you know, maybe get you know, employees that would never be considered previously because they weren't in the actual, like, you know, office location. So something like that can be really valuable in not only you know, helping people who need new jobs, but also, you know, just widening the pool for everyone, and allowing opportunities and organizations to really flourish.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think the remote work, that flexibility has helped across the board with candidates from all walks of life, you know, having more opportunity and being able to work in a way that really suits them and plays with their strengths. And we're being less kind of confined to this rigid, you know, in your seat from 9 to 5 in an office where you have to live in proximity to that city. So I think that's a great point. And hopefully with increased adoption of remote work and flexible working styles, we will be able to support more candidates with different backgrounds.
And maybe to add to that, because it's all about also women in communications, and I think we have one of the best professions to have this flexibility, because it's all about the results, right? And a lot of the things we are doing can be done outside the normal working hours. So as long as we are available for our customers, for the media, for our partners and stakeholders we are working with, it's very easy to adjust your work times to the situation you are currently in. And that's exactly what COVID showed us. So when you have, for example, homeschooling as a parent, there is an opportunity to do that during the working hours, but still deliver the results you and your boss or the people you're working with expect from you. And I think that's a great thing. And of course, not all the professions have flexibility, but thank God we have.
Yeah, and so much of this is based on trust. I think organizations actually learning to trust the employees they have and creating that culture where they can do that. We had so many of our staff, notably women, that were working from anywhere and everywhere in different countries. And I think that's an important part of it. And organizations have maybe had to learn that, where they may not have been as flexible before.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Rachel, just to build on that theme, trust, I think, is so important, and being a woman in communications. I'm curious from your perspective, what do you do to kind of instill trust in your teams, and how has your experiences kind of informed the way that you manage today?
Gosh, well, I'm probably one of the oldest on this panel, so I go back a fair way. And I think I started out when, you know, as a woman in PR, you were definitely part of the office housekeeping team. So, you know, we were note takers and coffee makers, and the old adage, if something had to be said, the man did it, and if you needed something done, the woman did it. And we did events and we tidied up, and that was sort of where we started out. I very quickly realized that wasn't necessarily the furrow I wanted to plow. I wanted a different way, a different career, certainly different ambitions, but still within this industry. And certainly that has been borne out by the leadership style that I have with my team. And male or female, it makes absolutely no difference in the way that we trust, how I lead, the expectations, how supportive people are. That has always been incredibly important to me. So you are absolutely, you know, your experiences coming into this have certainly set me up. So I think I've got a radar that's very actively set for when I see that maybe coming through from clients, where you detect a certain style or tone that is not going to be acceptable for the type of client that we want to have as an agency. But then maybe for people that you're bringing into the agency, you know, they might be the smartest and the best, most interesting, but we've got to create that culture of equality. And that is something that we do. I mean, you can bring it down to a very basic level. You know, there is absolutely no expectation on anybody in my office that it's the women that make sure the coffee's set out before the meetings begin, or the milk gets filled up if we run out during the meeting. There is no expectation that it'll be either the junior or the female that will do the note taking, because I've learned from that. And, you know, we're a very much open plan office, and we don't have dishwasher fairies. So actually everybody will put away the dishes, and that's not left to the women in the office because they're good at cleaning either. It's very much on a very basic level. That's where it is. But, you know, it emanates up and down. I think there's healthy respect and fairness and inclusion, which is the way that we want everybody in the team to operate.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know the team appreciates your efforts in that regard. Monica, did you have anything to kind of tack on to that as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say, completely agree. And we're the same way of just like, you know, there's no like norm for, you know, who puts the dishes away or who gets the waters or anything for a meeting. But I think too, something that's really important, and when I think about the trust build, it's allowing people, regardless of the title, to work on new projects, take on new, you know, creative, wherever it may be. Because it's something that like I personally learned at a you know, very early stage in my career. I worked at boutique agencies for pretty much the majority of my career. And I was lucky enough because of that, as an AE, you know, to be thrown new opportunities and said like, hey, we need you to work on this plan, or, you know, we need you to jump in on this creative brainstorm. And I think that it's not the case for everywhere that you go, but being able to give people that opportunity to jump in, take on a new task, and really allow them to build on their own experiences creates that level of trust. It just, you know, boosts morale overall, and you just have, you know, a stronger team and a stronger work product from it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I know in my experience as well, the kind of idea of equal opportunity within your actual role is really important, and making sure that every AE is getting those same opportunities to grow, and that you're not pigeonholing one person, perhaps because of an implicit unconscious bias that you might have related to gender or anything else like that. Kara, I'm curious for your perspective on this, having, you know, built your own business, and how did you approach really equitable division of the work and creating trust and equal opportunity?
I think that's a really good question. I would say like the thing that I keep coming back to is transparency. So making sure that the what is expected out of everyone is visible to everyone, and that you're clear and like specific from the beginning about what success looks like and what you need to do to get from where you are to where you want to be. And I think when I was building my own team and also with my work at Clarity New York, like that's one of the things that we work really hard at, is making sure that everybody knows what's expected of them and everyone knows how to do the job and everyone has the support or access to the support that they need: training, mentorship, relationships, the ability to ask questions, time with me, time with the team, that everyone has equal access to that. And then we invest the same in everybody and we're clear with our feedback so that everybody has kind of starting from the same point, even if you've come in from different places or have different experience or different backgrounds, that you know kind of when you get to Clarity or when you start working with us from day one, what you're starting with.
That makes a lot of sense. The expectations and the transparency, I think, is so crucial across the board, just for giving everyone really, how can you have a fair chance at something if you don't really know what's being asked of you? So that makes a lot of sense. And then you touched on mentorship and being a mentor. I think, at least in my experience, I had a fantastic mentor that I worked with for 6 years, and it was just invaluable to have that one-to-one connection, especially as a junior woman starting off in the industry with a focus in tech also. So I'm curious for you guys to kind of share some experiences with either a mentor you had in your career that helped shape, who you are now, and how you kind of pay that forward in mentoring people on your teams today.
I'm going to jump right back in from the beginning. Sorry, folks. I was thinking about this question a lot. And like, when I look back on my career, I think it was really hard in the beginning to find female mentors. PR like commonly is assumed to be very female. If you look around, well, the screens are off, but if you look around this room, you look around Clarity, we have a lot of women. And Clarity, I think, is unique in that we have 4 of our MDs who are women, and we have some great female role models here, but that hasn't always been my experience. Most of the agencies that I've worked at, except for a couple, have been very male or male at the top. And so when I've gone looking for mentorship, it hasn't always been easy. And I've had to look kind of outside my immediate work sphere to find women who can help me, women who can answer questions, women who could help figure out like what is the balance of work between home and like family and work, and how do you deal with a male client who's saying something to you in a certain way, or how can you better represent yourself in the office, or how do you advocate for yourself? And so I haven't always been able to have that, which is why I think it's so important that we all do this with our internal teams and that we offer our mentorship and that we make ourselves available to answer the questions and share the knowledge.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I've had both men and female mentors. And my view on it is that the more positive interactions that men and women can have in professional settings, the less prejudice there will be, full stop. So the more that we can involve men in all of these discussions, the better. I think choosing a mentor is important. I mean, you have a mentor because you want to increase your knowledge or increase your network connections, or for personal growth reasons. So that can come from male or female inspiration, I think, completely. I think if you're going to choose the right mentor, and it is going to be a man, then you've got to be sure what you're buying into, and that's both on a chemistry level and otherwise. And I remember reading an article that talked about the evolvement of that. You get some that are apathetic to the whole gender equality piece and they're completely disengaged. You have some that are aware, so they have some grasp of it. You have the active who's well informed about it, but doesn't necessarily get involved unless asked. And actually what you're looking for is the advocate, the person that proactively wants to engage in those gender issues. And as a consequence of that partnership that you will have as a mentor means that you're both going to benefit from it. Now, that doesn't mean to say you don't want any of the others, because actually you want everybody involved in this discussion. As I say, the more interactions they have, the less prejudice we're going to have. So I think mentoring is essential. If you can find a fantastic woman to do that, but there are some fantastic men that I know I would be honored if they'd accept if I asked them to be mentors for me. But I think if you are going to choose it, it's got to be to enhance and that both parties see the benefits of it, because I think that's going to be important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And on the topic of male allies and what men can do to help us create equality in the workforce and eliminate any bias there may be. of the males that you've worked with in your career, like what stands out as, yes, that's doing it right, that's putting us in a position to success, and creating a fair trajectory for success?
Gosh, are we all going to jump in? I mean, there are so many fantastic, I mean, it's probably easier even to talk about, well,
What
I
not
think,
to do?
well, possibly, I think listening and observing, I think, there's so much to learn as men in the female environment. We do use a different vernacular, but we all pretty much have the same goal. So I think listening, observing, if you're a male in a position, in a leadership position, it is true that you start a meeting, men will sit at the table and women will sit at the side, and they won't put up their hand to answer questions, but the men win. And I think as a male, you've got an awful lot to add, to be aware of that as a situation, draw the women in, watch out for the stealing of the ideas thing. That is a thing, it's a real thing, and that does happen. So I think something else is, be comfortable with maybe being uncomfortable. We're all learning at this. This stereotypes thing it's been going on for years, generations. It's going to take a while before we get it right. But I think the men that accept that they may say something wrong or have done something that isn't supportive of this whole movement, and can sit there and say, you're absolutely right, thanks for calling me out, we've learned it, now move on, they're going to be the ones that are going to become our allies, because we're all in this together and we're all learning. And that goes the other way as well for women in that context. I think we've got to be comfortable with realizing there were going to be uncomfortable situations. That's the only way we're going to learn it. So those are a couple of things that I think are hugely important.
Yeah, I've definitely been sitting around the table thinking, man, I would love to answer this, and then before I can get my hand up, whatever male's at the head of the table has already spoken for me. So I think that's a really good point. And Karen, I know you might have something to add to that as well.
Yeah, because I think what's one of the most important things, because I was thinking as well, who gave me the best advice ever? And maybe we have a lot of that kind of examples, but my dad, he always said to me, believe in yourself. And I think that's the thing, because if you believe in yourself and if you know your own North Star, it's true. Probably there are men that would be jumping into answering questions or putting up their hand sooner. But when you believe in yourself, it's easier to start a conversation. And it's easier when it's not even in the room, but maybe afterwards, to start a conversation and ask from a genuine interest about why things happen and how maybe a guy or a girl can help you in helping to develop yourself and putting up your hand next time, or maybe even giving you the floor in a proactive way because he or she knows that it's difficult for you to put up your hand. And I think that's the most important thing. It's not about bottom up or top down or doing it from a male or a female perspective. It's more about sometimes you just need to be vulnerable and make that your strength. So ask for help. I mean, everybody, well, almost everybody is willing to help you grow. And then I think this equality discussion or the diversity and inclusion discussion will kind of change automatically because we start conversations like we do today.
Yeah, I think you'd really need to be an advocate for yourself and saying, because your manager may not realize that he or she is jumping in and is, controlling the conversation when you are like maybe too nervous to say something. So being an advocate for yourself is absolutely important. But I do think though that like as managers, you have to think about the people who are working under you and saying like, am I giving them everything that they need? Maybe they're too nervous to tell me and be their own advocate. So having those check-ins with them just to make sure everyone's on the same page, make sure that they feel as if, their voice is being heard, is also like incredibly valuable and important.
Absolutely. I think that's spot on. Is yes, everyone wants to advocate for themselves, but you're right. In some situations, you just don't feel like you can. So having leadership that's willing and able to have those check-ins and make sure they're giving you the opportunities that you need is really important. And obviously it's International Women's Day, so we're talking about women, but gender is a lot more than just men and women. We know that there are a lot of different gender identities. What role do you guys think the presence of lots of different gender identities in the workplace plays towards, creating an equal and inclusive environment in which everyone can thrive? I'm gonna go to Karen on this one.
Sorry, it's me. Sorry. I'm always thinking about Karen and Kara. So needing to.
I know they are pretty similar.
Yes, it is. So I think again there, you're true. We have so many genders across the globe, but it's also a mix of character, a mix of different kind of emotions. And again, that is probably where everything comes from. It's when you try to understand where the other person is coming from and what is important for this person, for the person's North Star, for the workplace where this person is trying to develop and to become better and to be better for everybody around him or her. So I think that's a very important one. And again, there is a conversation. It's about asking questions. It's about listening. It's what Rachel said earlier about observing and not being afraid of starting the conversation, because especially with that observing part, you often can see if someone is feeling kind of unhappy in a certain moment or a certain situation. And by addressing that after a meeting, for example, just giving someone 5 minutes attention and understanding where the problem is coming from, and then also make next steps, tips or agreements saying like, I can help you with that. Is that okay for you? Or maybe help me. I mean, I am a person that in meetings with clients, for example, with my team, I often tell them, I'm going to try to keep my mouth shut, but I'm not always that good in it. But by asking feedback all the time, that's how I can make a change and how they can make a change. But I'm trying to open the floor for them.
Yeah, I'll jump in and add to that. I think as communicators and storytellers, we look to the human experience to inform what we do. And if you have more diverse perspectives and you have more diverse human experience, no matter how people identify or where they come from, anything like that, you're going to get a better work product and you're going to be able to deliver better value for your clients. So I do actually think that it is incumbent on us as people building agencies to seek out different perspectives and to seek out different viewpoints, different genders, different races, different places in the country, wherever we might be from, to ensure that we have that at the table. The clients that we're working with are going to be increasingly more diverse as the world focuses on this. And I think we have to do our part in making sure that we're bringing everybody to the table in every way, because it just contributes so much to the creative process, which is what people hire us for, is to bring that out.
Yeah, that's an absolutely great point. And we have to be able to tell stories that resonate with lots of different audiences, and there's no better way to do that effectively than by having people who represent those audiences as part of the team and doing the work. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really uncomfortable, and we're all going to make mistakes as we do it. Like, I'm white, I went to college, I've had a job my whole career. There's a lot that I don't know about other people's experiences, and as I try to use like my own privilege, my own experience to make space for other people, like, I definitely know I'm going to get it wrong, but it's not going to stop me from doing it, because I think it's necessary for the future of our company and for the industry to be able to make space for those people and for everybody who wants to be part of the industry.
Absolutely. And that kind of, I think, relates to the point of, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Sometimes we are going to fumble and we're going to be like, man, foot and mouth, that was not great. But if we don't keep trying, we're never gonna get there. So I think that's an important message. getting a little more tactical as far as things like language that employers can use in the workplace and in something like our job descriptions or even our benefits, something like moving from maternity leave to parental leave. How important are those changes, and how do you think businesses should be optimizing towards more inclusive language throughout all the comms in their organization?
Maybe to jump in there, I think it's extremely important, and not only like today on International Women's Day, we are looking at the opportunities for women, but especially in your example, for example, on maternity or parental leave, it's also a very important one, because it's only a short while that in the Netherlands, even fathers will have a normal amount of days off to be with their newborn. And I think, why was that beneficial only for women? I mean, a father needs quality time with his newborn as well. So I think it's a two-way win if we look differently to certain wording or guidelines and things like that. So extremely important, in my opinion.
I'll jump in and add that we know, statistically, women will look at a job description, and if they don't check every single box, they won't apply. Whereas a man might look at the same job description and say, like, I think I can probably do 50% of this job, and will apply. And so I think when we think about our candidates and who we're making our jobs available to and how we're presenting our company, we have to be really conscious of things like that. And I don't know how to fix the language or what it should say, but we know that there are like lenses that people view things in. And if we can use more neutral language or less like gendered or watch for bias in our own writing, even like with descriptions of qualifications and what we're looking for, it will help so much to make sure that we're reaching diverse candidate pools.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the same topic, what would you say, what would your advice be to someone, female or otherwise, who's interested in a role, and yeah, maybe they meet 60% of the requirements listed, but they feel like they don't have that remaining 40%. What's your advice to those folks?
Apply.
Yes,
Always apply.
always apply. It's the same conversation. I mean, I don't know how many, everybody maybe read the Lean In book back when I can't even remember when that came out now, but the classic story is someone saying, well, I'm not going to apply for the promotion because I might get pregnant. Why? Because women with children don't succeed. They don't have ambitions. They're not, I mean, it's a nonsense, isn't it? But I think we've got to be telling as they come up through the ranks, they've got to feel that that's still an opportunity. They can't get there having worked in an organization and then think they can't apply. That would be a failure on us as employers, that they didn't think that was an option. So again, as Cara said, it's the language we use. It's as a mentor, are you making sure that you're constantly talking in that language so people think anything is possible? Because it really is. Doesn't mean to say it's going to be easy. The mother's guilt or the parental guilt never goes away, frankly, if you're working mum. But I also don't think we can forget those that don't have children. There's lots of women who have ambitions and motivations and goals that they also want. And if children aren't in, then that's no different for them. So I think, as you say, there's so much we've got to learn. We don't know it all, and we're on a journey ourselves trying to make sure we do it. But we know that that's what we want to do and how we want to show up. So yeah, we've made a start.
Yeah, and the point you just made about the need to support women who don't have children and who might not ever want to have children, I think that's so important, because you often hear about the single female who is left to handle the work at the end of the week at 8 p.m. on Friday because, oh, well, everyone else had to go home to their kids, so Susie doesn't have kids, she can handle that. That's wrong. That shouldn't be a thing, but it has been. So what do you think employers can do, and like what's the onus on them to make sure that we are just treating everyone equally and we're not putting additional burden on people who don't have kids, especially women, who I think society, we just think women, childcare, mothers, like that's not it. That's not everyone. So what can we do to empower and support women who do not have children for whatever reason it may be?
I think there just needs to be equal opportunity. So if you're going to have flexible hours, make it really clear, on how that flexibility works. And, make sure that, to Kara's point earlier, that transparency piece is absolutely front and center. Because if everyone's on the same page with, so and so needs to go even to a doctor's appointment, like that's been an issue at other agencies that I've worked at, and like allowing people the flexibility to go to those doctor's appointments, or whatever they need to do, or have 30 minutes to themselves to go for a walk around the block. Like all of that is incredibly important, and as long as you just lay that down at the start and make sure that everyone's transparent and on the same page with how what the expectations are for work, then that's a great way to start.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think it's not even only the employer, because it's the whole team that's involved in all the activities. And again, it's there about starting the conversation. What are the expectations? What do people find important in their personal life? Why do they maybe need on a certain day to leave early because they are doing a sport, or maybe volunteer work that's so important that they need time off, or at least be available that day to leave early? And then you can have the conversation with all of your colleagues saying this is really important for me. And if you give me that, if you help me to achieve that, you can count on me in other occasions. So I think also where borders and lines between a female or male, or all kind of genders, or cultures diverse, it's also about the employer and the employee. It's not only the responsibility of the employer, it's also the responsibility of the employee. If you don't tell your employer what you need, the employer is not going to give it to you out of the blue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. And it is important that people feel comfortable going to their managers and leadership in their office and saying, hey, I have to take my dog to the vet. That's just as like anything that's important to you and that you need the time for should be heard and respected, regardless of what it may be. And it's right that we need to make sure we're supporting everyone on the team with what they need at all times, so that there is that culture of we have each other's backs, and what's important to you is important to me because you're my teammate, and I want everyone to succeed and be happy ultimately.
Yep.
So if we were to give a call to action to everyone who is tuned in today to this discussion, what they should keep in mind throughout the next year and coming years to create more equal workplaces, what would you say? And I'm gonna go around, so apologies for who gets put on the spot first, but I'm going to start with Kara.
My favorite. I think I would say that it takes everybody, to the point that we were talking about earlier. It's not just incumbent upon women to do this work. I think it takes every single person who's involved in a workplace or a culture to be a part of it. I think we should all be able to use our voices and our own kind of momentary privilege or our own opportunities to help to lift other people up. I think we shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes and trying new things. And I think I would love to see more people and more companies sharing what they learn and sharing what works for them, so that everybody who's invested in this can work on it together.
Awesome. Rachel, how about you? What would your call to action be?
I'm going to steal unashamedly from an earlier panel that I was on today, where I heard somebody say it, and it's very, very short, which is, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think that's a really powerful thing to constantly remember as a leader of an organization. Are we showing up in the right way? And it's very easy to start getting back into the flow of work, and these things might take a sidebar, and then we sort of revisit them when we think we should, or a moment happens. I think constantly we've got to be able to put a lens on ourselves and see, if I was somebody coming into this organization today, am I inspired, no matter what my gender, where I'm from, what the background, by the organization and how we operate? So I think that's a good line for everybody to take in the work that they do.
Absolutely. Monica? Can I go to you next?
I mean, I agree with what everyone has said so far. And I would say too, you know, just making sure that you're checking in. And whether you're checking into the people above you or checking into the people below or your peers, that check-in is so incredibly valuable. I actually came across an HBR article, and it came out just before the pandemic, and it said that 40% of people in the workplace said they felt isolated. And, can you only imagine what that percentage is after being, working from home for a little over a year now? And so, I just think it's so incredibly important that everyone does check in with their colleagues and just sees how they're doing, and, not work aside. How are you doing? What's your, what makes you happy every single day? What still drives you to sign on and log on in the morning? So making sure that we just have that like baseline foundation of check-in is incredibly valuable for the overall happiness of the team.
Yeah, no, 100%. Just we're human beings. We're not just work robots.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to remember that. Karen, how about you? If you had one call to action or piece of advice for everyone.
Always nice to be the last one, right? I think the most important thing is that you define your own North Star, and especially that you understand that you are in control of your own life plan. Because if you know your North Star, the road to there can change, but you will always keep in mind that there is this North Star where you want to go. And then I truly believe that even if bad things happen, you can still achieve that. And because you are in control of your own change, and there are so many people around you that are willing to support you, that are willing to give you guidance, that are willing to answer your questions, and do that. I mean, don't be afraid to ask for help and achieve what you want to achieve.
That's a great parting line. Your own North Star, if you keep your eye on that and just be adaptable along the way, realize the way you get there might change, but as long as you keep an eye on where you want to be, I think I'm going to use that. I think that's great. I'm going to think about my North Star. I do have some questions from the audience here if we want to get into the Q&A. First is, what's a piece of advice that you wish you would have gotten at the start of your career?
I could take this one. Not really that I wish I would have gotten, but I feel like there's such a value in networking, and it starts, at the beginning of your career. Like, don't be afraid to join groups, meet other people, get different perspectives, because, your colleagues are fantastic to learn from, but I wouldn't just limit yourself to your colleagues. The more you can branch out and meet other people within the industry, whether it's on the, agency side or in-house side, I think the better off you'll be, because you'll just learn so much from other people.
Absolutely. And just for those who are brand new and might be thinking, networking is awesome, where do I begin? Are there kind of tactical things, or there, platforms people should join, groups, things like that you would recommend?
I mean, I think like PRSA just here in the US is a common one. Like, in college, it was always like, oh yes, got to be part of PRSA. But I would say too, like, just do a search locally and see, what type of groups are within your city. I mean, LA, there are a lot of different like female-led groups, tech-facing, entertainment, obviously being here. So it's just do a little local search, and see what you can find. Not all events have been fruitful in my personal experience, but that's with everything. So you win some, you lose some, but as long as you're getting yourself out there, you'll really meet some fantastic people along the way.
I think just an extension of that, with COVID being as it is be curious. There's just so many podcasts, so many articles you can read, so many great people to follow on LinkedIn. there's so much out there that you can actually get involved in it and digest and people to follow. So I think, it's been a very strange time. I think for people in the comms industry, we like getting out there. We love meeting new people. So we've all struggled not being able to do that. So it's finding substitutes to that and sharing it with everyone. So many recommendations that have been shared over the last year that have, filled up my podcast library, which has been fascinating. So I think, yeah, that's the only thing you can do whilst you can't meet in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And then another question from the audience is just that with the shift to remote work, which has been now happening for quite a while, I think a year almost, what were kind of the biggest challenges and what did you learn during that transition as leaders of your offices?
Oh,
No, go.
We all have so many good learnings.
Yeah.
Karen, I would be curious to hear what you think about this too, because you and I both sort of joined Clarity in a remote moment when we couldn't really be in person anyway. We also started with the company then. But I would say like one of the biggest things I've noticed is that there seems to be a big difference between like remote on purpose work, where you like intentionally are building an experience around being remote or being decentralized, and then the kind of like remote on accident, which is what happened to like everybody about a year ago, where we just all sort of found ourselves working from home, trying to recreate the in-office experience. And as we look at Clarity's future and building kind of like what the future looks like, there's a lot of considerations that need to come into play when you're building a remote environment on purpose and creating that space to be more flexible and allow for people to not be in an office every day, but still maintain that same culture. So I think that might be less about an experience thing and more like an observation I'm having as we're kind of thinking about what does the next year look like and how do we rebuild and what is important to us and how do we figure out what comes next. There's a really big difference between those two things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely something that I see as well. But I also see, and that's really important, is that you have to make maybe even more time for the conversations and to meet up with your people. Because normally when you are in the same room, you find these energy things, or you see in certain body language if someone is feeling happy or unhappy. So, and with the remote, so a lot of video conferencing, for example, it's so important that you sometimes take the one-on-one time. And also what we experienced last Thursday between the UK and the London and the Amsterdam team is find fun moments. So we did a quiz, we mixed the teams, and it was so much fun. And that's also, I mean, we need to have fun as well, don't we? So find these opportunities.
Yes, we do. And especially if you can have fun with different offices and different locations. That's almost in one way, that's been a big advantage of the remote work. We can interact with our colleagues in the UK just as easily as our colleagues down in LA, which from San Francisco is obviously a lot closer. So I think that's been really cool. Another question we have from the audience is kind of a hot topic. PR professionals tend to get a lot of flack on Twitter. You send one ill-timed, ill-thought-out pitch, and before you know it, you're blasted on Twitter. What is your advice for folks to kind of remain resilient if they ever do encounter kind of snark like that, or perhaps ways to avoid it?
I think we just have to all remember that we're people, and people will make mistakes and things happen. I think everyone here has had probably a bad experience with a reporter. I'm sure not too many, of course, but it happens, and you just need to have the support from the rest of your team to say, hey, it's okay, brush it off, like we're going out with the next pitch. I think seeing them is incredibly embarrassing when you spot them on Twitter and everyone's like sharing on Slack, like, oh, someone messed up, but everyone makes mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's all you can do is just learn from it, move on to the next.
Yeah. It's like dating. If you're getting caught up.
Swipe whichever way is the bad way. Like swipe,
Yeah, whichever
reject
way
that.
is better.
And the tip is,
Definitely.
I mean, it's a very, very random tip, but watch Bold Type on Netflix, because that's about the millennials and all the mistakes that are being made on social, for example, and how you manage and how you grow and how you do that. So definitely worth a look and to learn from.
We'll write that one down. That's good. Another question from the audience: if you were not a comms professional, what other occupation would you want to pursue?
One. Rachel, would you
Karen,
like to go first, or shall I go?
I studied drama at uni, and I wanted that to extend into, I wanted to be a speech therapist. And if that was something I always wanted to do, and I had a friend who had a very bad lisp, and that was something I wanted to do. So maybe at some point in my career, that's where I'll go back. Maybe sometime. In long way.
Cool, and that's helping people. That's an important job.
There you go.
What about you, Karen?
Oh, I would be a life planner, definitely. So that's, of course, where I found my own life plan, but also why I find it so important to help people. And then my biggest wish would be that I did not need to earn money. So you can really help all these people in the world that normally cannot afford a mentor or a coach or a life planner or anyone that helps you in your development, but that you can say like, I'm here, you can use me, and I will help you further to find that North Star again.
That's so lovely. Like, now I might want you to be my life coach. We'll talk about that offline. Monica, how about you? What would you be doing today if you were not doing PR?
Honestly, I would want to have a food truck, because I love making food. I love feeding people. It's like, it's my relaxing thing at the end of the day, is like making dinner. And I baked muffins this morning. I woke up really early and made muffins this morning. It's just something that
is there a particular type of food? I mean, also being in LA, like the food truck kind of capital. Have you gotten that far in this thought process? What type of truck you would have?
I have, because LA, we have tons of food trucks, but there's no like late night, like 24-hour pizza place just to get like a slice of pizza. And something I miss about San Francisco, like living in SF, and I would have a gluten-free pizza truck.
Wow, okay. That's a good one.
Or Hawaiian food. I've thought about the both of them, but
I love Hawaiian food too. Okay, noted. That's something that could still happen eventually. And then we can all promote it. Kara, how about you? What would you be doing?
I think probably I would have a pet rescue for special needs animals. I know that's real specific, but I've always loved dogs. I have a dog. Many of us are pet owners here, and just like making a place for animals who don't have anywhere else to go. That's probably a big farm upstate with lots of special needs animals.
Oh, that is so sweet. That would be awesome. Cool. We have one more question from the audience, which is that if we were to flash forward a year to International Women's Day 2022, what's something that you guys would love to see having happened in the communications industry that would show that we've made progress on ED&I in this next 12 months?
Within Clarity or as a whole?
I think as a whole for the industry, but certainly if there are things you want us to see in Clarity, that's awesome too. I'd love to start there.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that we're working on is just like having, increasing diversity within the agency. And so I just think that, still PR and communications is predominantly white female, and I think it would be great just to see more progress made for a higher diverse rate.
Definitely. Kara, did you want to add? I feel like you're.
I'm just nodding along because I think that's something like that I would also like to see. And I think it, making some of those commitments around like positions of leadership and opening pathways for people who might not kind of step into those roles on their own. I think, many tech companies we've seen say that they're going to work to diversify their boards and their executive teams and all of that kind of stuff. And I would love to see kind of similar commitments from within the industry to have board of directors and executive positions and leadership positions being filled by like all different types of people, and to make a kind of point to clear those pathways so that people who might not normally like apply for those roles or wouldn't be selected for whatever reason will have more pathways into them.
Absolutely. Well, I think that concludes our Q&A unless we have any last minute questions through the chat, but I think that has covered it. So I would just like to thank you, amazing panelists, for being here today. I think it was a really great conversation, lots of interesting perspectives and insights, things that we can all take with us and use throughout the year as we work to create a more inclusive environment. So thank you guys all. And as I said at the start, definitely keep an eye out for additional content from Clarity for Women's History Month. A lot of good stuff in the pipeline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.